mic check, please.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, Chris Jennings.
I'm your host, Dr. Mike Brazier. My name is John Gordon. I'll be your host.
And I'm your host, Katie Burke.
Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America. We bring the resource to you, the DU Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Ducks Unlimited podcast. I'm your host, John Gordon, and I've got a special guest with me today. It's Dale Bordelon from Louisiana, a.k.a. the Bayou Beast. Dale, welcome to the DU podcast.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Dale, well, you've been on several podcasts, recently, talking about your love for waterfowl hunting and duck call making in general. A lot of folks, I'm sure y'all have seen Dale on social media, as he's really built a presence there, showing Louisiana heritage and the old school ways of waterfowl hunting. And we participated in a very special hunt yesterday at a very historic place in the waterfowling world, which is Beaver Dam Lake in Tunica, Mississippi. We used old school clothing, old school guns. It was an incredible hunt. You can see it all on DU Nation on YouTube, coming up pretty soon. Dale, that hunt is always going to remain in my mind, for the rest of my life because of the people who were there, in the atmosphere and the hunting itself. How does that rate among the best hunts of your life?
Well, I tell you, I'm 61 years old, and I hunted since I was a very young man. I've hunted a lot of places and with a lot of people, but a good duck hunt comes down to me. It's the people who you hunt with. Not so much the place that makes a big difference, but a great bunch of guards makes a really good duck hunt. And yesterday, Mark and Lamar board, that's about the best people, hosts, and fun people you can get. And yourself and Rams and the whole crew, it was such a good hunt and such a beautiful place. And the duck hunting was spectacular, man. This duck hunt is going to be in the top 5 of my, and I've hunted some, besides my kids, the duck hunt with my boys is the best, but what made it so good yesterday was these people, the place. It's such a historical place. The old guns we hunted with. That put the icing on the cake.
It could put that. And you're talking about, we had Mike and Lamar Boyd, Beaver Dam Hunting Services, that hosted us. I mean, those guys I've known for many years, and they're the salt of the earth people, just some of the finest individuals you'll ever meet. We had Ramsey Russell from GetDucks.com. Ramsey has hunted literally all over the world. Had his little dog Char out there, man. She was picking up birds left and right. She was awesome. It was really special. Let's go back in time a little bit, Dale, and let's talk about a little bit of your background to begin with. I know you were raised up small town Louisiana. Learned to hunt from your father, and started building calls later on. So just give us a little bit of a look inside of your past and how you started.
I grew up in a little place called Hesma, Louisiana. It's a French, probably all French community, potato community. They had an old lake there. It's a lake called Lake Pearl. We never went a whole lot of places as a young man, and I thought that was the only place in the world at the time, being a young man. And my daddy had a mill. We sell feed. We buy grain from farmers, but we sold feed to these people who had chickens and hogs. And a lot of these people would come from that Lake Pearl, and there was old French people. This is a lake where nobody ran boats. It's about a 3,500 acre lake. Everybody owned a pirogue to hunt in there. Most of the old hunters that I remember, they had one call their whole life. And I was always amazed when them old people would come and that old forks or oats would stick out their pocket, and we'd get in a conversation. And I was a young man that stuck with me. And so I kind of incorporated their ways as I grew up duck hunting. And I hunt kind of like they used a lot of Model 12s and 97s in those days. And I still hunt with those guns now. So I'll build my own pirogue, which is dugout pirogues out of a cypress log.
Right.
And I was always fascinated about duck calls. And I've been building duck calls about probably over 30 years. And I'm very fascinated about the cane call because that's my Louisiana heritage. And it all started back in it was in the 1850s when some guys from Illinois came to Louisiana. Louisiana used to be they called that the place the sportsmen to hunt. Everything was on the coast back then. And these guys bought some of their calls, which is like the metal reed calls and walnut calls. And these old French people never saw that. And so they didn't have no calls, but they had a bunch of bamboo that grew river cane. That's the only native cane to Louisiana. That was all over South Louisiana. So those old French people, they didn't have no electricity. They didn't have no drills. They didn't, but that bamboo had a hole in it already. So they kind of, mashed the big end with a little end, and they used some cane for reed material back then. And they used whatever they could find. There's no written book on how to make a cane call because they all had their own little way of doing it. In the late 1800s, around 1900, they started using hard rubber reeds off of cane calls because it made a good call. And that went on through till about the 60s, till that quit. But I grew up to seeing all this, and I'm just very old-fashioned, and I'm trying to keep something alive, that heritage. And so I'll build handmade cane calls, and I'll build it all by hand like they did. It just does something to me to do that. It's like I'm doing the old people justice. So yeah, I'm just trying to. My background is I grew up with these old people, and I've seen so much in a small rural community, and I'm just trying to keep that going as I get older.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think I remember you talking about this switch to hard rubber reeds that they used combs, right? And for those reeds, how they made them?
Ace combs, that's right. Ace combs came out probably in the 1870s, I think, in that ballpark. And so about 1890s, they started, man, that's a good material. They'd file it down with a file. They could, it took a long time to make a reed, but they wasn't selling duck calls. It was for them personal selves to try to kill ducks. They wasn't doing this for sport. So, and then word spread on the Bayou, and so everybody eventually made hard rubber reed and calls. And so now, when you go back to 1930s, 1940s, everybody had a hard rubber reed and a cane call, and then in South Louisiana.
Right, and on DU Nation as well. We had a great little segment with Art Lejeune of Fox, man, and Fox has made a cane call forever. And you showed me the bamboo patch out back where they get their cane call materials from, and that's fascinating, man. It's just the history of it. It runs so deep in Louisiana, across the board with duck hunting. We were talking about old guns as well, and we also did a little segment on DU Nation yesterday talking about the Winchester guns and how the Winchesters were such a huge part of early duck hunting. With the invention of the 1893 by John Browning, which became the 97 that you prefer, and then in 1912 the famous Winchester Model 12 comes out, and those two pump guns right there probably accounted for more ducks on the table, I would say, than any other guns in history, especially at that point. And probably if you just go back, it's still been hard to beat them now. I mean, maybe the Browning Auto 5 has been part of that. Remington 870 certainly has accounted for a lot of it. But those early Winchester guns were a huge part of it, and it was great to have those out in the blind yesterday.
Absolutely. And the gun I shoot is made in 1915. So that gun's 107 years old, and she don't ever miss a lick.
That's right. And tell us the fascinating story about that gun and the hunting license that was in it.
This is a good story. And it was about 1983. A friend of mine got two 1897s from this place I'm talking about, Lake Pearl. And one was made in 1915, one was made in 1916. And in those guns, he took it apart to clean. There was an old hunting license in it, and it was a hunting license from 1929 30 season. And so I had made a copy of it. That was 40 years ago almost. I made a copy. I made a copy of it then, but it was at a local bank. It didn't come out good, but I kept it. And time went on, and let me back up a little bit. There was another fella that bought these guns. My friend bought it from him, but that other fella found this license. But my best friend ended up with the guns. So as years went on, I ended up with both guns. So on Facebook, social media, of course, you get a lot of people looking, a lot of attention. You learn a lot of things. That's one good thing. So I posted that story of the gun and the picture, and I had a fella come out to me and say he has that old license. That was his daddy's.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, so he wanted the duck call. And I said, you come to my shop, bring that license, I'm going to give you a duck call. Because I had the gun. So he came over there. He bought the original license. I had it copied, blown up, laminated, and I sold a whole bunch of copies to people that wanted them. I didn't make no money. Whatever it cost me, it's just to share some heritage, spread about that old gun. So the old license I have, and then another fella reached out to me that said, man, that looks like my great-great-grandpa's name on that hunting license. This is where the story gets better. The fella came to my house. He recognized the name. He wanted to know if he could buy one of these old guns. So I talked to my best friend that had the guns, and he didn't mind if it was his great-great-grandpa. So when he came to get the gun, he bought me all the literature, the picture of the fella that had the gun, but it turned out to be his great-great-uncle. He had a name wrong, but this old man was born in 1889. He served a year in France in World War I. His name was Eugene Turner, and he had no wife. He didn't have no kids. Nobody would remember this man. Now I'm exposing this man through this, right. And I'm so happy to do that. So the boy didn't take the gun because it wasn't his great. He was a very, very decent fellow. So I have both guns, the picture of the man that had the gun and his whole background. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a story with the picture and put them guns in a 2-gun case and pass that down to my kids when I'm going. So that's, you're talking about duck hunting. It's not all about pulling the trigger. Look what happened right here from hunting. The stories, and history.
The stories are endless in the history, and that's the thing I guess I may love about old guns more than anything else is that they've got history to them, right? I mean, it's not a new one off the shelf, right? And what stories could they tell you if they could talk to you? It's fascinating to think about.
I know that old man shot ducks on that Lake Pearl. That's where it come from, and growbacks.
Yeah, we talked about the growback, I think, when we were down there for DU Nation with the gar fishing episode.
I'm going to tell you something. Growbacks fed many families in the Great Depression. It's a yellow-crowned night heron is the name of them. They was heavily hunted for food in the Depression.
Right.
My grandpa hunted them to feed his family, and it's a very edible bird. But Mr. Eugene Turner hunted ducks and growbacks with this gun. And can you imagine if you could see now, was at Beaver Dam Lake knocking them ducks down 100-something years later.
He'd be extremely proud of it, I'm sure, man, to see those old guns still being used for what they were intended for and not sitting on a shelf somewhere, not in somebody's safe, not hanging on the wall, right? They're still in use.
That's exactly right. And like, we shot ducks yesterday with these old guns and 2 3/4 shells and still getting the job done. Is that amazing?
It's incredible. And it was great to see a guy like Ramsey Russell, who's kind of we're not going to mention names, but a modern day gun guy, right? I mean, he was a little hesitant, I think, to get out there with that old Model 12. And once he got out there and got into it, man, you could see a light turn on in his eyes that he really respected and understood why those old guns have standing the test of time, man.
Yeah, Ramsey got his go-to gun that I don't know if when we started this, what he was getting into, but I can tell you one thing. halfway through the hunt, he was pumping out that old Model 12 killing ducks, and he had a big smile, and he was a happy camper just like all of us. I think he really enjoyed that. Rams is a good fella. He's a personal friend of mine, and we go many places doing podcasts with him on his deal, and I found him places to go in Louisiana, and I'm glad he came along. It was a very good hunt, and to watch his dog, it was very nice.
Oh, yeah, she was great. Great tiny little black female. She was like 9 pounds, I think, something like that. Really great drive in that dog. She was all about it from the jump. We talked about this in a little DU Nation segment as well about the different guns, because they were all different. They were all Winchesters from many years ago, but we all had different ones between me and you and Mike Boyd and Ramsey. So Ramsey had a field grade Model 12 2 3/4 inch gun, and I was shooting what was really at the time that when it came out one of the premier duck guns, the Winchester Model 12 Heavy Duck. That was the first one they made with a 3-inch chamber. That was really. They're heavy guns. I mean, they're way closer to 9 pounds. Really, and they swing extremely well, man. I'd forgotten how well that gun shoots yesterday, and you were telling me, man, I need to use it more, and I'm going to. It really is great. You had the 97, which is an exposed hammer gun. For people who are not familiar with it, it's got a very distinctive look to it with that hammer. There's no other gun like it. And then Mike had one of his Winchester Model 21s. Which was one of the great American double shotguns ever made. John Olin and Winchester, that was his baby, a gun that came out in the 1930s. I think Mike's gun was a 20 gauge from the 1950s. But just a gun that's just, man, you pick it up, it's just quality. That's all you feel in that gun.
Beautiful
in your hands.
Gun.
And another thing, there's been a recent revival in shell manufacturing using bismuth, which is friendly to these old guns. So it's brought all these old guns back into use, because this ammo is friendly just like lead was to it. So we were, using bismuth shells, old guns, wax cotton, mallards coming in, gadwall. I mean, it couldn't have been any better.
No, that was the ultimate hunt. It was unbelievable.
It really was. And then, okay, so let's shift gears a little bit, because Beaver Dam Lake has been attracting ducks for, there's no telling how long, probably hundreds of years, thousands, right? I mean, it's an old oxbow that was formed by the changing of the Mississippi River, and it's got elements to it that ducks really need and really are attracted to by that lake. They're elements that every good duck hunting habitat has to have, Dale. And I think a lot of times they're misunderstood about what you really need, So let's talk about that a little bit in your mind. Yeah, for all your years of hunting, especially in Louisiana, what makes a good duck hole?
Well, okay, that's a good point you said. Look at Beaver Dam. What's it, about 4 or 5 foot of water? I mean,
yeah, at the deepest point.
Okay, there's nothing there to eat, huh?
There's nothing. No, it's just water.
Cypress trees.
Yep.
And they kill all the ducks they want every year. And It's been happening.
They'll kill 1,000, 1,200 ducks out of that one blind.
So there's nothing for a duck to eat.
Nothing for a duck to eat. That's right.
You made a good point, and I'm going to follow up on this. From my experience and my opinion, my daddy hunted a spot just kind of like that in the 50s and through the 70s, and he'd kill sacks of ducks. There was nothing in there to eat. Them ducks was coming there to lay up for cover.
Right.
They was coming from where they ate, I'm sure just like Beaver Dam. My daddy always told me, my dad was a big duck hunter, you want to hunt a hole where the ducks are going to lay up, not where they're feeding. I've seen in my life, and I'm not a biologist, but we're killing a lot of ducks, me and my boys, as we speak every year, because I've fixed my habitat up to where ducks want to go lay up, not eat. We have a field, and we kill mallards in that field, but you can only hunt it maybe twice a week, then you wouldn't kill no more. We have some nasty buttonwood cypress, kind of like Beaver Dam, kill ducks every day and every day. So this is cover they're coming to. That field they was coming to eat, but ducks feed it. Ducks, they can feed at night and go lay up in the morning somewhere. So the question to that is, I'd much rather hunt a place where ducks want to go for cover versus a place they're eating. And this is my personal deal, and we kill a lot of ducks. And I'm not trying to brag on this, but I love the sunshine. I like the friendship and the blind, but I like to kill ducks. So every year with my boys, I focus on how I can fix my spot up to kill more ducks. And we just hunting in buttonwoods. They call it buckbrush.
Yeah, more buckbrush in the south here, yeah.
Buttonwoods, buckbrush, cypress trees, little rings in the woods. And the ducks I'm killing is coming in there to set up, and they'll start coming at daylight till about noon, maybe 1 o'clock. They'll sit in there all day. Then at dark, say 5, after 5:15, they're leaving. They're going back in the fields. A lot of people want to plant fields. A lot of people I know, man, there's no ducks. I'm not killing ducks. I wouldn't hunt like that, but that's my opinion. So
you're very right. That is exactly what makes Beaver Dam special, and it always has, is that the fact that that's a loafing cover hiding spot and not a feeding field, feeding area. I think it's really overlooked a lot. And I think too much focus is placed on, ducks eating, right? Because a lot of times, you're very right. They feed at night. They go nocturnal on you, okay? So if you're not going to the spots where they're going to lay up for the day, you're going to have, be completely unsuccessful.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And if I had to buy a piece of property, it wouldn't be a field. It'd be an old slough or something. That's what I'd be looking for.
Exactly.
And you could plant buttonwoods, dig it out, you could work on that. But that's why I'm killing ducks. I told my boys, leave that field alone. You might kill a duck or two here and there, but we're killing limits in the nasty stuff. So don't worry about the field. Leave it alone. Let's focus while we're killing ducks and keep it clean, sprayed. We spray water. Let's focus on that. So that's what we've been doing. And last year we had a good season. Year before last, this year we're having one heck of a season. Now, when we're not killing ducks, it's not the place. It's because, Louisiana weather, sometimes ducks, it's not good sometimes.
Right.
But most of the times we're killing ducks in these places I'm telling you about.
Migration of birds southward is there's many factors involved in it, and we talked about this, and I've talked about this with several people lately, that it's been good in the South this year because of several factors that happened. We had some early weather push out of the Arctic that was cold, right? It was early in the season this year. A huge factor in Central and Mississippi flyaways both were the dry conditions throughout the Midwest. Those birds didn't stay up there this year. They came farther south, because there was no water. Water and ducks, man, it's a huge deal. I mean, one equals the other. If you don't have one, you don't have the other. So, so Texas coast is the same way. They're having one of their better seasons in years because the central flyway areas of Kansas and stuff were, places like Cheyenne Bottoms, which normally will be holding 100,000 birds, was completely dry. And so they just kept coming farther south. I think that's overlooked by people too, is that there's so many factors involved in migration, that you can't just depend on every single year you're going to have the same amount of birds because the conditions are going to vary. And you can't be overstressed that those conditions mean everything as far as how the birds are going to migrate and where they're going to winter and how they're going to stay there. And that's a lot of what Ducks Unlimited does on their projects. We look at it from a standpoint, okay, what does a duck need? Duck needs cover. A duck, needs a place that it feels safe, right? So a lot of what we do in our construction and engineering of wetlands involves moist soil, grasses, cover areas, right? They're very natural places, and I think that's maybe the best places to hunt ducks is natural.
I remember years ago when we hunted and it's a place called Red River Bay. Across the Red River, they had Sunk Lake, lower Sunk Lake. It's nothing but hundreds of acres. It's a shallow lake, but in the vicinity, it's hundreds of acres of buttonwoods. That's all it is a swamp.
Right.
I remember my friends going in there. Now, we hunted in Red River Bay, but I remember them they would go in the mornings with no decoys. I'm going to tell you something. And they would shoot the mallards they wanted in small holes. They kill all the ducks they want back. So I learned this a long time ago. When a man's killing a lot of ducks in one place, you got to take note what he's doing if you want to learn.
Right.
But my daddy had a hole. These people had this hole. Lake Pearl's what I'm telling you about. That's kind of like Beaver Dam. They got rings and cypress trees. They kill all the ducks they wanted, not in the fields. You might kill some in the field on a rainy, nasty day, but it's not going to be consistent.
Right.
So, but in the woods, ugly places. But I think you're right. Two things happened to us in Louisiana. Now, I pay attention to this because I'm way in Louisiana. And when them ducks get here, we had a month early big push of weather, and it's a dry up in the mid United States. That was a big plus for everybody on the coast had ducks. And if you didn't have ducks, you better get another hole next year because there was ducks here. So everybody's doing good in Louisiana. It's a good season, and there's so many factors that play into the migration, and not only the migration, but your hunting hole. You could do so much to fix it. So my big thing is hunt your cover, don't hunt the fields, and I think you do be very more successful.
I agree. I mean, it's kind of a word to the wise, right? You look for those kind of places. Throughout my life, I've hunted, ducks and geese all over the place, and I'd have to say that without exception, some of the best places, and I say best, I'm talking about consistency. That's the key thing. You can always have a great hunt here and there, but it doesn't last. Right. You can really put too much pressure on birds in some areas, and they'll leave them. It's always been natural spots, natural lakes, natural sloughs, natural marshes. It's always been those places that ducks have been going to for, let's go, millions of years. I mean, that's what they've always used. And so, I think a lot of this modern day is like, if you build it, they will come. Well, not necessarily they won't. If you don't have natural spots that they want to be in, I really don't think it's going to work. It's a good point to make that you really got to seek out, either whether it's public land or you're looking for private spots to hunt, that if you don't have those natural places, it's going to be tough. Switching gears again a little bit, we talked about this earlier. Name of your call is the Bayou Beast, the Bayou Beast Call Company. So there got to be a story there, right? I mean, why is it the Bayou Beast?
Okay, where I'm hunting at right now is called Lac Calabas. That's French. Calabas is a gourd in French.
Oh, okay.
Lac is lake. Lac Calabas, So anyway, my grandpa used to, I'm going to give you the story. My grandpa, he had ran cattle there in the 1930s. My grandpa lived in a little place called Bordelonville, and that's where my people settled. They came from France. They came to New Orleans. They settled in Bordelonville. It's in the Vos Parish, central Louisiana. Back in the 30s, the old people raised cows and hogs in the woods, free range. And my grandpa would go for 2 or 3 days with his cousins to round up, these cows and tag them and all that. So my daddy went in World War II, and when he come out the war, he wanted to hunt. And he said, he actually died, he called him Papa. He said, Papa, there's any place we can hunt? And my dad said, yeah, Bayou Cabas, La Cabas. So they went there in about 1950 when they built the camp. Late 40s, but in 1950 they built the camp. So my daddy hunted there, the same spot I'm hunting now, from 1950 to 1964, with his brother, with his daddy, friends, and I knew these old people. They all gone now, but so my daddy he had cotton gins in the elevator, so he didn't hunt for a good many years. So anyway, we hunted at this place called Red River Bay, like I told you. That was in the late 70s and 80s. These people, Bayou Cabas came up for sale in the mid-80s because it was a bunch of farmland around it. And these people come with the big bean boom in the early 70s from Arkansas, cleared all this land. Most of these people went broke. That land was not meant to be farmed with all the ridges and clay bottoms. So my daddy ended up, he bought it in 1986. So anyway, we all started hunting there, and that was 37 years ago, whatever. So when I started my little call business, I've been making calls for about 30-something years for my personal self and friends. But when I really got into it, I had a name I called it Calabas Calls. But then I told my wife, I know what it is because where I hunt. None of the people's not going to know that too much.
Right.
So in the meantime, we did a National Geographic came over there for a week with Brady Barr, the whole crew, and we did a segment on catching alligator, snapping turtles. And we had a big turtle, and Brady Barr said, boy, it's a big bayou beast. He made the comment, bayou beast. So after that, I caught an alligator that was 13 feet, 2 inches long. I caught some over 12, exactly where I'm duck hunting today. And I told my wife, I said, you know what? I got to call my call company, Bayou Beat, because I'm killing ducks with these duck calls or I'm catching these big alligators. So it's a good sticky name, Bayou Beast. So I bought the name and I decided to go with it, and I think it's a good name.
That's pretty cool. There's always a story behind things, and that's another thing about Louisiana culture. The alligator is a big part of it. They have been around there and have been hunted and provided food and their hides and everything has been a big part of Louisiana culture and economy there for years. And like you said, just right there where you're hunting ducks, you've got the alligators too.
Alligators all over. Last year and between and Thanksgiving, in December, I had some alligators steal my ducks. In January, they stole my ducks. I'm going to tell you something now. I've been hunting alligators 30-something years. People say alligators hibernate. They don't eat in the winter. That's not true.
Yeah,
I've witnessed a whole lot of stuff. They'll come out on the warm days and they will eat.
And man, it's for me being such a retriever guy, it'd be hard for me to hunt there all the time because of the dogs.
Can't hunt a dog where we at.
That's it. I'd have to go somewhere else still. Just for
John,
the dogs.
Just this year I caught 3 over 11.
I know it, man. There's some big gators.
I didn't even know they was in there. All that. They ain't no telling what else is in there. You can't see all that nasty
That's right.
stuff.
It might be a 15-footer in there. That thing. An alligator that big. Well, he's an apex predator, right? There's nothing else that he doesn't have any fear or anything.
No, I've caught an alligator. I've seen an alligator. I've caught him. He was 12 foot 2 inches long. He had about 100-pound hog in his mouth.
Yeah.
The first time I seen him, he was swimming with it. He had ate both hams already. He let it go. We grabbed the hog. We bought it in the woods and got it out of that. Then I put some lines. I never could catch him. And then my friend dropped me off in a boat with my rifle, and I shot him. And he was 12 foot 2 inches. The point I'm making, you know how much fighting that is to catch a 100-pound hog with them feet kicking?
It's got to have been rough, man. But
that's a bad animal,
That's
man.
a bad animal, man. 12-foot gator. There's no doubt about that. But anyway, we're going to end this, Dale, with we're talking about special hunts like we just had one, at Beaver Dam. You're talking about hunting with your kids, and I'm a father as well, and some special hunts in my life have been with my son. There's just no way around it. Is there one particular hunt with your kids that stick out in your mind that you can think of just right off the top of your head?
Oh man, I bet you I got 1,000.
I know we can sit here for hours and hours.
Anytime I'm with my boys and we shooting a bunch of ducks and we all killed this special. And I'm going to tell you, this is a special hunt. I got my little boy, my dad's passed on, but my little boy was 12 and my dad took him. And he was able to kill a duck with him at that special. I wasn't there, but he won't forget that with his grandpa. And my grandpa never forgot it till he died, so that's special. My other boy, I've watched him. We all hunt together. He went on, built his own little blind. He's in his 20s now. He learned from me and kind of took it, and I think he's going past he's a hunter. I've watched him build his blind, and he's killing ducks unbelievable. But it's a small one-man blind. He knows what he's doing and the place to hunt. And now I'm 61. I've took them when they was 3 years old in the blind. Killed all their first duck. We did everything together. Those boys are taking me now and making sure I'm all right, which I still mind the ship. I'll go get the ducks, and it does something to my heart.
Oh, it's the truth.
So, John, I can't pick one out. They're all so special.
I had a moment like that with my son. He was 23, early 20s as well. Last Christmas Eve, I started him out, taking him along on goose hunts and stuff with me when he was 5 years old, and so he's been around it his whole life, the dogs and the calls and everything, and he guided me on that hunt. Right? I mean, we had to make a big walk through all these woods in this little backwater slough near Senatobia, Mississippi, on some public land that was hard to get to. So there was nobody else back there, because that's what key in public land sometimes. If it's tough to get to, nobody else was there. So he guided me through there, going there in the dark. I mean, he knows where to go. I have no idea. I'd have been lost. I had no way I could have gotten back there. And, he really chose the spot and set the decoys and everything. And we killed ducks, and it was Christmas Eve. It was just a special moment, man, because I could see the torch, had been passed, right? Exactly. I had passed on that waterfowling tradition to my son. And that's the whole key to all of this surviving in the future, is that torch has got to be passed on to these kids. So they're the next generation of waterfowl conservationists, hunters, people who are really going to support it.
I want to mention something. You're talking about that. My boys all blow my cane calls. I have a son helping me make cane calls when he's not working. So they all blowing cane calls, and my youngest son just purchased him, a few months ago, a 1889, 1897. He purchased him a 1953 870 with the corncob forearm.
Oh, yeah.
It's passing off. So my boy, he's 27. He done bought 2 old guns because he's watching his daddy having so much fun. He's blowing cane calls, and I have my homemade decoys with him. My tradition and heritage, when you're 20 years old, you don't care about that. When you get 30, 40, you start. It's going to my boys, and it's passing over. That does make my heart a lot of good, and I'm so happy to see that.
Right. It is cool to see him. Like I said, obviously, that's exactly where he came from. He's watching, seeing you having so much enjoyment out of those old guns and the old ways, and he's really following in those footsteps.
I believe so.
And his kids will be the same way, man. Y'all, will pass that on to them. And that's how this circle keeps going, that we're going to have people to support wetlands and waterfowl conservation, far into the future. So anyway, Dale, thanks so much, man, for being here on the DU podcast.
Thank you all very much.
I think you've got some really great points to make, and we really appreciate it. So I would close it with, waterfowl traditions are being kept alive, by waterfowl hunters and conservationists, and without your support of Ducks Unlimited and wetlands and waterfowl conservation, there is no future for ducks and duck hunting. So I'd just like to thank everybody for giving your support, and thanks for listening to the Ducks Unlimited podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the ducks. Stay tuned to the ducks.